All right, welcome everybody to the Sunday morning Dharma talk. Today, the opening talk will be given by Dave Fitzpatrick, or Big Dave as we like to call him. Dave has been practicing with PZC since 2016. He took his 5 precepts in 2022 and 10 precepts to become a Dharma teacher in training in 2024. Dave is an embedded software engineer in Rhode Island. He has 2 grown children and lives with his wife Sharon in Fall River, Massachusetts. Kwan Haeng Sunim will be answering questions after the talk. Kwan Haeng Sunim met Zen Master Seung Sahn at the Cambridge Zen Center in 1986. He was ordained as a novice monk in 1999 at Chik Chi Sa, South Korea. And in 2003, he received Bhikku precepts at Tong Do Sa, South Korea. He has lived and practiced mainly at Hwa-gyesa and Musangsa in Korea, where he performed the jobs of Housemaster, media director, and head monk. Kwan Haeng Sunim received inka in December 2020, and he is currently abbot and co-guiding teacher right here at Providence Zen Center. So, thank you very much.
So before we came into the main hall today, while Sunim was doing the orientation, I was talking to a few people in the hall, and we were talking about how sometimes you want to give a talk that's got some depth or some advanced topic in it, and I had pointed out, Juan Sunim had pointed out that I think he was talking about Zen Master Seung Sahn, how he always taught the same thing over and over and over and over again. You know, he said, I only teach, don't know. And then I mentioned that, you know, there's a spectrum of brand new people to, we have a Zen master in the room, to people that have mastery of the topic. And it's hard to give a talk without leading to confusion or questions or frustrations. So that talk lined up perfectly with what I wanted to talk about anyways, and that is frustration and confusions and questions. So in the last few weeks, I've noticed a few things, and I've heard a few things, and I've experienced a few things, and I wanted to give you a couple of stories, some of my own, some of the things I've seen, and then I want to talk about what I do with my confusions and frustrations and how I deal with them. So the first story is about a lady, this goes back about 10 years ago, and what's kind of funny is this lady was from New York, and she had a really, really strong New York accent, and that kind of adds into the last part of the story. And she gets up and she asks this question. She says, how do I deal with a difficult coworker? Okay? And the person that fielded the question was wonderful. They gave an amazing answer. And as they're hitting all the hot points, you know, desires and aversions, and you're checking, you're putting expectations on the situation, they covered all of it. And as they talked about it, they did a beautiful job, and you could feel it because people in the room going, yeah, good teaching. And at the end of it, you know, oftentimes a teacher will say, did that help? And this lady goes, she goes, yeah, but what do I do about him? So we had the same reaction. A lot of us giggled, and looking back at it, the giggle was probably twofold. It was a funny situation, but I think it was also some of the people that laughed understood much of the teachings. And when the person says, I don't get it, you kind of feel for them that you know where they're at. You've been through it yourself. You know this. I hear the lessons. I don't know what you're talking about. You know. I had just read a blurb recently. I thought was really applicable, and that was, you only hear what you know. You only hear what you know. So it's kind of like that slangy thing. It's like, you know, you're not picking up when I'm laying down because you don't understand it. It's going whipping by. So you're left with some confusion. And early on in my practice, somebody told me about that type of confusion, and they described that practice as a lot like being in the fog. Most of us have heard that one. You know, when you're standing in the fog, you can see it, but if you stay there long enough, you're eventually soaked. And that's kind of what our practice is like. You just got to keep exposing yourself to it until you're completely soaked. That question put forth by my New York friend is a pretty common question that you hear in different forms, and it's kind of a subject-object kind of a question. I've got a problem with that. And we had that, somebody asked a question last week, and Eva, shout out to this great metaphor she gave on the beads about, you know, these are the things in our lives, and maybe swapping out the good with the bad and working one at a time and whatnot. And the question was, you know, what do I do if I have a bead I didn't put there? So that to me sounded a lot like I have a problem with that. And I didn't speak to this person, but I felt like they were a little frustrated by the answer. And at the end of it, you know, they gave that polite, oh, thank you. And they go and sit down and they take their cushion. I've done that myself quite a few times. I asked a question myself, sitting out there, I asked a question of the teacher, and the question was misunderstood, and they gave this really great answer to the question I didn't ask. And at the end of that, I was like, oh, thank you. And I went and took my seat. There's been other times where I've asked a question, and I remember once I asked a question, and the teacher, like, right up in my face, oh, you're checking, you're making. And I was like, what the hell are you talking about? I didn't know what checking and making was, so I was confused. There was one time I was sitting here. It was brutal. I sat here and I had just given a talk, and right after the talk, the teacher looks at me and goes, that was an awful lot of I, my, me. And then they went off on I, my, me, talking about I, my, me. And I had to sit here for 30 minutes. I swear my face was like red. Oh, the cup. This is another one. We have teachings here, obviously. Kongs show up a lot, and they appear in Dharma talks sometimes. And last week, the cup came up. Is this a cup or is it not? And when you don't know the answer to that one, I think it can be extremely frustrating. Really aggravating, because you don't. You're at the entry level of the Kong questions, and it's just maddening. For me, it was definitely maddening to get these questions and have no idea how to deal with them. And then when you say, I don't know, the teacher's like, good. And you don't know either. So now it's a double whammy. You still don't know what. Thank you. On the cup question, show of hands, who saw Eva answer the question last week? She's giggling. So everybody missed it. I saw it. So anyways, yeah. So that's being able to, understanding those and being able to get them, it kind of makes you giggle, kind of makes you smile. It's kind of, it sounds terrible, but it feels like an inside joke sometimes. Just to torture some people here. The game. Who knows the game? All right, so everybody that knows the game, don't say anything. Everybody that knows the game now has a little giggle going on. And everybody that doesn't know the game is frustrated. Tell me about the game. I'm not gonna. Just let you sit with that. So, let's see. So what do I do with it? What I do is I get myself in the fog. And by fog, I mean I come here. And I don't mean just come here and sit. I try to come here, let's say come here early. Some of you probably noticed that there's usually like a few regulars sitting at the door when you enter, when you come here. There's usually people hanging out. It's almost like a coffee hour. We're hanging out, we're talking shop, we're talking about this, that, the other thing. Inevitably, our practice comes up. we cover everything. We've talked about religion, we've talked about direct teachings here, we've talked about psychedelics, we've full gamut of conversations go on, just in that little foyer half hour before practice. But there's other opportunities for us to get to hang out with the Sangha. We have these volunteer opportunities. It's good for the building, we need all the help we can get, right? But it's also a chance for you to hang out with people in a space that's a safe space to talk about this stuff. I don't have anybody outside this practice that I can really talk to about this stuff because they think I'm a weirdo. Here, very safe, you can talk about everything. One time, I was out shoveling mulch with Kwan Haeng Sunim. We were out in the forest over there spreading mulch. And we got to talking about kongans and my particular difficulty with kongans at the time. And I was shoveling and we're just chatting about it, and he's giving, he's leaning on the shovel giving me advice. And that little conversation out by the trees changed my direction for kongans. I still can't answer them, but my difficulty with the process is gone. So now I don't mind not knowing. It's okay. There's been other times where I've been out there, digging holes, planting bushes, ripping up rocks, moving rocks, doing whatever. It's an opportunity to rub elbows with the Sangha and talk about stuff. Casually, relaxed environment. Explore your understandings. Find out what other people's experiences are. Find out what works, find out what doesn't. And sometimes I work through these goofy ideas that I've got tangled in my head. And that sort of comes to giving talks. They make us sit up here and give talks. They make us sit us up here. And if you look it up, one of the reasons they have a junior person give the talk is that it forces us to put our massive thoughts into words and try to make a coherent story out of it. And that takes practice. You just got to keep trying, and hopefully it comes out somewhat understandable. Another great place to really explore, for me, these topics is right after this program today on Sunday. There'll be snacks and some tea out there. I've been hanging out there for about 8 years, milking everybody for every ounce I can get out of them, mostly Sunim. But just keep asking questions. You leave here, sometimes there's a question that's hanging, or an incomplete answer, or something comes up a little bit later, or you want to ask the person giving the talk, you want to ask them a question. Normally, we don't get to field questions, it goes to the teacher. So there's an opportunity to come hang out and ask those final questions. And since I've been sitting on this cushion giving out talks lately, it feels like things are starting to do a little bit of a turn. Now people are asking me questions. I'm like, oh, crap. And there was a couple of questions that I've gotten following my last 2 talks, and I got them out by the salsa. They approached me and talked to me about it. And I thought the questions were so great, I wanted to bring them back and share the questions that they asked with you guys, and just give a little commentary on what I answered. So the first question I received was, I had just given a talk, and I had talked about, our teaching phrases: don't make, don't check, don't grasp, don't hold, don't know, blah, blah, blah. And in my talk, I had said how that stuff is all super, super valuable, and I use them a lot, so it's very valuable. But underneath all that, what I thought was understanding, was this current undercurrent of sadness that it was just there. And then at some point I had a bit of a change in perspective into don't know, into clear mind, into that original nature. And that shift changed how I saw the sadness, totally changed it. So the question out there was, is the sadness gone? Ooh. No. No, it's not. But my view of it has completely changed. So now, when I find that I'm feeling sadness, I drop into this clear mind, I see what's going on, And for some reason, now I can clearly see it's a product of my own ruminations. I'm stuck on a wheel, and it's grinding me down. It's making me sad. So I see that, put a stop to it. What's my situation? And then respond to it. And the self-generated sadness goes away. But then you also see other sadness. I was at a funeral recently, and the sadness showed up. And out of habit, boom, practice showed up. What's this? And I thought, this is totally okay. Be sad. And I was. And it was fine. So, did the sadness end? No, it's a human emotion. It comes, it goes. I think the trick is to not attach, to be able to use your practice to not attach. The second question I got was, I talked a bit about this clear mind thing again. It seems to be the center of our practice. I was talking about this clear mind, and I had gotten into the idea of non-self. You know, in that clear mind, at some point, it includes everything. There's no self, it just includes everything. So I mentioned non-self. And the question I got out there was, so if there's non-self, what's up with reincarnation? What do you do with that? Oh, I don't know. Flipping through the Compass of Zen for inspiration there, Seung Sahn talks about, you know, this consciousness after death floating around, and he used an example of Mozart, and, you know, I don't know any of that stuff. That's not my experience. I've never died, so I don't know what happens afterwards. And when I appeared, my consciousness, when it appeared, I don't know when that was. It just sort of is. So I don't know what happened before birth. So all I have is just this right now. And I'm okay with that. Just this. I don't know. So, my point of the talk, I guess, is sort of a cheerleader, rah-rah thing for the Sangha, is to come hang out. There's this saying that we talk about a lot where, you know, you dump a bunch of potatoes in a pot, you stir the pot, and the potatoes wash themselves. That's what we do. It applies, I think, both to the guests and to the residents. So I really encourage everybody to come here as often as you can and take advantage of these free lessons that are available to us all. And if you hang around after this talk, I'll be out by the salsa. And also, anybody that's curious about the game, come out to the salsa and see if you can get somebody to tell you what the game is. But don't ask me, ask somebody else. All right? And I think that's close enough. All right, thanks everybody.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's a good talk. I remember years ago when Dave first came here, I would ask him every few months if he would give a talk, and he always said no.
Years.
Yeah, it took a year.
Years of nope.
He would say no.
It's still nope now, but
I didn't think he would ever get up here, and now he'll come like, I think it's been like 2 or 3 times in the past 3 or 4 months.
It's been three out of the last 5 weeks.
Whoa, see that?
I'm out of material.
But that's really good. I appreciate that. And the idea of coming and rubbing elbows with the Sangha is really an important thing. And especially just coming and listening to like the talks and stuff, because then you get a handle on how to do things, how to use the practice. And so that's kind of like how some of the things is. One of the other things is that when people come up and they give me a whole line about I'm having this kind of trouble at work, I'm having this kind of trouble, my stock answer for that, and I feel is the best answer, is that what it is that we do here is that we give you the tools, right, of seeing things clearly. But there's no way that I could know the answers to all of those questions. And very often, when you are clear and the answer don't come except in that moment, just like that, how could I possibly answer those questions for you? I couldn't. You have to be in the moment, and when you have a clear mind, and then the answer just appears for you. That happens very often when you have, if you're practicing. And so, I often talk about this. A person I met in Rhode Island, and he was, he came there, and he actually came there. He said he wanted to become a monk, and so I talked to him and found out that he was angry all the time. And he was a school teacher, and he got, and so what it is you get on the buses, and on the buses the people would bump into him, and that's not exactly what he was angry about. That's one of the things that made him angry. He was just naturally an angry person. And so he bought a motorcycle. And so, but he's still getting angry, and then, and so then, but what did he do? He came and he started practicing. I talked to him about my ideas about anger, and he come and listened to the talks and learned how to look at his mind and how to work with his mind. And then later on, he came up and said, "I don't want to be a monk." I said, "That's okay. Don't worry about it." And he's still around. When I left Korea, he was still in Korea teaching English, and so that is actually how it is that you do. Is that this? There is some inside, as you say, inside stories or inside ways to do this that you're not going to just learn at what orientation or 1 or 2 times coming and practicing. But it does, if you do come here and you listen and you put the techniques to work, which is returning to this moment, then you'll find out how to take care of some things in your life. That's almost guaranteed. If you do the practice, you're going to get something. That's as simple. So the question is this practice for you? Okay? And then if not, then maybe another practice like a Japanese style Soto or Renzai, and there are all many different practices. There will be no one practice that fits everybody. That's guaranteed. So there are some commonalities, and what happens sometimes when I get a group of people who I look at and they say they don't want to hear about religion, then I just talk about the mind, about practicing, what happens when you meditate, and the commonalities between all human beings, the spiritual side, and that kind of a thing. And so, but I did have a little thing I wanted to maybe talk a little bit about. Unless somebody has some question. Shami?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you, Dave, for your wonderful talk. I can relate so much with everything that you said, and thank you, Sunim, for your teaching. So when I first started coming here in 2018 and getting into the practice, I encountered koans and also the teaching phrases which you talked about, Dave. And I remember sitting in the kitchen with Theron and saying to Theron, "You know, Theron, I find so many of these teachings to be arbitrary, and I really don't know what to make of them." And he said to me, "You know, I find them to be pragmatic," and that opened my mind. But I still do get confused and frustrated with some of the phrases, like don't make and don't check. So recently, the one that's been coming to mind is don't check, because when I first started coming here, and Martin was here, he would say that a lot. Don't check, right? And I'm wondering, what is this? What is this checking? Because I might have my idea of what checking is, but I've never known. So Sunim, can you please talk about what checking means in this practice.
Sure. You want me to say that? Are you going to sit down? You want me to talk about it? What do you want?
Thank you. I'll sit down.
Okay. So I have a conversation with somebody, and after the conversation, I start thinking, oh, did I say the right thing? Did the person like me? What will I do next time if I'm going to see that person? Shall I talk to him? Yeah. That's checking. That's checking. And the thing about checking is that all of us have it, is that it also can get, for me personally, when my checking would lead to anger. And so it is really a good thing if you could really relax on the checking. And one of the other things that is very important, and I'll say this now out loud to all of us, is that if you're in and around this house, I don't know about you, but I don't say those things to people. And that used to be when Zen Master Seung Sahn first came here, people would say things like, don't check, don't. And then after a while, you begin to realize that that was actually a way to hit people, boom. And people started walking around just whacking each other. and after a while, you get quite angry. So it wasn't fun. I mean, I know situations like at a Zen Center, especially when you get a bunch of people and then they start running around using those phrases. It's not very a good way to do it. So it's a teaching. Okay, it's not something that you use and whack somebody with it, because I've seen that happen quite a bit. And so I don't use them, but you could say, then what is checking? Some of the worst checking happens when you check yourself. That's you can tie yourself up with checking. And so that is something, and checking's not the easiest thing to not do. Okay, it is so much part of your personality, our personality, to check. And so it's funny, one time I gave a talk, and I remember it, in Wagesa, and it was about checking. And so what I said is that, okay, that if you check, then the best thing to do is that when you're sitting, check and see if you're sitting in the right position. Check and see if you're very clear and coming back to the thing. And so I used the checking to kind of turn around. And I was just I don't even think I was a monk there. And then afterwards, somebody else gave a talk and just told people how wrong that talk was. But now this is a really funny thing, because later on I heard Zen Master Seung Sahn yelled at that person and told him he had no business saying that kind of thing. So it's very interesting how all of that goes, is that sometimes we have a teaching and the teaching works, but it doesn't work in every situation. So yeah, checking is I think I've said enough about checking. You all understand about what checking is. And to get at it is not such an easy thing. That is something you have to practice and look at. So we have another question.
Well, since you just said that you were going to stop talking about checking, maybe I shouldn't ask my question. But
I'm not going to check.
As you were talking about that, I was wondering, then what is the difference between checking and evaluating what just happened for some positive effect?
Mm-hmm. I would say suffering. If you're checking and you're suffering, you're in trouble. If sometimes you need to understand, if you give a lecture or you give a talk, like what I'm doing now, then it's very interesting. Dave mentioned something about giving a talk where somebody asked a question and it was answered, the person answered a whole different question very well, but he didn't answer that question. Believe it or not, I've looked at talks that I've given, and I saw myself do that. Somebody asked a question, and I gave a great answer, but it wasn't for that question. I said, I wonder how I missed that. That happens. But how do you evaluate when in all of that, if you want to say, I would just say that if you're causing yourself suffering when you're looking at what you're doing, then I think you're doing way too much checking. Okay, and also with others, if you're comparing. And you know, in the news, you know what they call it? They call it about whataboutism. And if you're doing a lot of whataboutism, then yeah, that's another style of checking. And so, does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So our practice is all about helping ourselves and helping others, and a good key to that is, am I being a help? Am I causing suffering or not? And that's a good kind of basis to look at if you're wondering about these things. And the idea of making something, they have in Wadesar a sign on the wall that says, in the 24 hours, don't make anything. That's a very interesting saying, because don't make anything is simply another way of saying follow the situation. And I don't know, sometimes I get just do things and get in a little bit of trouble in Korea. So I would tell a story about the lady who had kids, and so the kids would come home and she'd help them with their clothes, help them out to school, and they come home from school. That's just doing it. That's not making anything. And then sometimes she'd go in the kitchen and she'd like make a cake or something like that. And then and that was just being a mother. She wasn't making anything. But the Korean people say, she made a cake. And I said, nope, that's not making anything. And then they went and told the teacher, and the teacher asked me about that. But that is like what I'm saying. Really, not making anything is just following the situation, doing what's required, and not adding to it. And also this thing what David talked about, and Dave is actually getting into practicing quite well, is this idea of being sad, and this he can feel himself making the sadness. That's a very interesting point, because believe it or not, anger does the same thing. I have a lot of experience with anger, and so believe it or not, yes, we get angry. Okay, so we get angry, but oftentimes, if you look back there, you see ourselves making ourselves angry. We're pulling that forth. Okay, and if you can do that, and especially if you can see that, you can, just like Dave, you can stop that. You can, it's something you can, but that's the kind of practicing thing where you can then stop it. And yes, some of us are connected to our, attached to our emotions, and we don't always want to stop it. we like to get angry. We've met people who enjoy that anger, and also for whatever reason, fall into that sadness out of habit. I don't know if you enjoy it, but you fall into it out of habit.
It's horrible.
But those are the kinds of things, actually, where you can have some good control over it with practicing, by practicing, because then you get to see it clearly and you get to see making it. I often tell people that I have in the past, I've done a decent amount of practice. I still get angry, and sometimes I go with my anger, and there's a point where I'll just stop. It only goes so far. But there is a thing sometimes where I will get angry, and I see that I'm making this anger, and I just turn to myself and say to myself, "Oh, go ahead, get angry. I don't care. Knock yourself out. Mm-hmm. Do it." And then for some reason that just stops it, You want to get angry, I don't care, go ahead, get angry. So it's funny things like that, but in order to do that, you need to do practice. And so something that I want to talk about that often comes up is karma. So karma is a kind of interesting I guess you could say concept. It's an interesting thing. And so Zen Master Seung Sahn would say, karma is made by your thinking. Karma is made by your thinking. And the Buddha said it's karma is your volition, your intention. Okay, so your volition, your intention. So that's your karma. So then, and we have a saying in this book here, in our chanting book, in the back there, and it says, "Our karma has no self-nature, but is created by our mind. If our mind is extinguished, our karma will be extinguished. When we see both as empty, this is true repentance." So that's a kind of interesting way that we talk about, for instance, doing bows. So when you're doing bows, which is that you're not doing bows and thinking the difference between bows and exercise. When you do an exercise, you're improving your body. So yes, you're kind of making something. Oh, I'm going to do that. Yeah. But when you're doing bows, you're only doing bows, and in that time, you can really see your mind. You can really see your mind, and you can see if whether you're making something or not. And sometimes you, when you're doing bows, you do something that you feel like you haven't, you wasn't correct. Okay, you wasn't correct. You did something incorrect, and so you're doing bows. But thinking about doing the incorrect thing isn't that isn't. Taking care of the karma of that. Just bowing, that's how it's doing. Not just only bowing, that's what it is. And so, yeah, that's a funny thing. And so the interesting thing about that is, so karma is made by your thinking, it's volition. It's what you have to have the intention of doing that. And it's the same if somebody gives you a candy bar, and I like that candy bar, and if I enjoy it and that's the end of it, that's fine. But if they give me a candy bar and I say, "Oh, that was a good candy bar, I think I'm going to buy one next week," and so next week I buy, "Oh, that was a good candy, I'm going to save my money, make sure I have enough money," and then if I don't have money, and that kind of makes a kind of karma. You can see that, and you can put that out on other things and see how that works. But it's a very interesting thing. Something happened to me, and so this also, this is having this do-it mind. So if you just do it, right, that doesn't make karma, and it's not there. So you're standing there, and a youngster runs out in front of a street. You see him out the corner eye. You just reach out and grab that person. That's just doing it. That's without karma. That's it. And then the question comes is, what does that? What does that? Okay, it's like, who is it that's sitting here? And so I have a story I just remembered that was like that, is that I was in the monastery. We were doing the kilche, and a group of us went up to the bell to see how to hit this bell. How can we, which is what I was teaching people, so that we hit the bell at 7 o'clock. And then on the way down, it's these stone steps that goes up to the bell. And then on the way down, I stopped for a moment and turned to the person and was talking. And when I did that, I stepped on the stone, but the stone was kind of like that, so that when I stepped on it, my heel went back, and I was going off that ledge. I was going to fall off that ledge, and the person I was talking to reached out and grabbed me, just like that. It was there was nothing, no thinking, and he just reached out and grabbed me. So there's nothing about that. He wasn't at home practicing that, So then the question comes is, what did that? Where did that come from? What did that? There was no thinking. That was before. If he'd have thought about that, I'd have been on the rocks. So that's a kind of a very interesting thing. So that is how a little bit about karma. But then there's something else, and that something else is cause and effect. Because their cause and effect also has to do with that whole situation. For me, what is cause and effect? Then the fact that what happened, what he did to me, actually has a cause and effect, whether it generates a karma or not within himself. That's a cause and effect. That has an effect. So the universe, so we do have an effect in the universe, whether we think about it or not. And there's a saying, I didn't get a chance to write it down, by Dogen, and he talks about how when we act correctly, we leave no trace. And this trace goes on infinitely. So that's this trace goes on for infinitely, how that works. So yeah, I just thought that maybe some people had some questions or some ideas they wanted to talk about karma and that kind of thing. Okay.
Hello. So I've been thinking about the I don't know mind.
Thinking about what?
The I don't know mind.
Okay.
And I found that I personally have kind of a conflict with it because I have a habitual tendency to always want to know the answer of everything. And I was wondering how I could work with that in a way in which I could practice I don't know mind without having so much force towards it.
Sure. Yeah, that is. You really have to believe in this don't know mind. And how do you do that? You do that by asking yourself is, what am I? Okay? So if you ask yourself sincerely, anybody in this room, ask yourself sincerely, what am I? Eventually you're going to come to this don't know. And when you hit this don't know, then you ask yourself again, don't know, and it's going to continuously appear. And it'll get such to the point where I don't know, I've done that a number of times, where I won't even say the words to myself, don't know, just appears. So then that's what you need to do, is you need to believe in, don't believe in my don't know. Don't believe in what I'm saying. And the other thing is, you don't want to say, I don't know. That's a bit of a trip. You don't want to, so you want to say don't know, only don't know. Okay, so later on this will work itself out. Don't worry about it now. Don't think about it. But really, the way to do that is ask yourself, what am I? And if you sincerely do that, and it takes time, it's going to take a while, eventually you're going to get to this not knowing mind. And so when you come in the Dharma room, hopefully when everybody's sitting in the Dharma room, we're just returning to this not knowing mind, this before thinking mind. I mean, I know what you're saying, that you habitually have answers for everything, because you look very intelligent, so there's always an answer. Okay, so then sit there and knock yourself out, give yourself all the answers, but when you give yourself an answer, you got to look at that and eliminate it, right? You got to eliminate the answer, then you go to the next one, and then you got to eliminate that answer, then you go to the next one, and eventually you're going to run out of answers. That's asking yourself, what am I sincerely? Okay? It's very systematic, and that's what we ask. That's why we ask ourselves this question, what am I? And I think, as from what I understand, is that the Kongan didn't actually appear until 1,000 years after the Buddha was around. So he wasn't asking himself Kongans. They didn't have Kongans in those days. It's a teaching technique that appeared. Very interesting teaching technique that appeared, and it's very helpful. Did that answer you? Yeah, okay.
If karma is created by mind alone type of thing, is it right or wrong to use the phrase karma as applied to groups of people? The United States has a karma, the people at the Zen Center have karma. Is that kind of right or wrong? In other words, things are going on in the country, for example, or in the world for that matter, because of karma. Is that correct to say? Or?
Yeah, I would think it is. I would think it is.
You don't think it is?
I would. It is.
Oh, okay.
I think that is. And why I say that is, Zen Master Seung Sahn says that if you're born an American, you're born a Korean, and Korean people, they all have a certain karma, and they're born a Korean person, you're born an American person. But for me, what I see is that on a personal level, what I do is I see this whole idea of what slavery was. What was slavery? It was these people, it was getting labor, free labor for nothing. Do you know that karma is still going on? If that, you know, those people that were doing that stuff pass on that karma to the next generation. That continues. We got a whole system of that. You just see it. How can these people work for nothing? and you can almost see how some people talk about it, is that at some point they thought that, oh, having slaves, that's not such a good thing because they can kill you. They can get they get together and just murder and mayhem, you know. But in the other words, but suppose you let them think that they was free. Right? You gave them jobs, you gave them... You see where I'm going with this. So for me, in that sense, I mean, I really feel that if a society isn't treating its people fairly, then that's what you got. That's what you got. And you can see that karma going from way back then. To me, that's karma. And then you have stuff where, yeah, I don't know, I feel like that... and this is my personal thing about that, is that the murder and mayhem that we're doing in other places, then we as a group will experience that somewhere down the line. And generation, that's how it, somebody once asked me, it was an interesting thing. They said, oh, because they were thinking that there might be a war, and they said, oh, I'm glad I probably won't be around at that time. And I said, because you pass away, you think you're going to escape the karma for that? You think? Well, you know, I mean, it is a way of kind of thinking of is. But if you sit and you look inside and you see the cause and effect, you see the karma, how could it be different? How could it be different? And that's by your experience of looking inside. Is it? Oh. I was just getting warmed up. Okay, good. Yeah, no, that's okay. Yeah, no, you're right, Eva, you're right.
All right, thanks everyone for coming. Thank you for your great talks. Just a few announcements. We have a bunch of retreats and other events coming up, but not until May, so you get a little bit of a break. But starting on May 3rd and 4th, we have a YMJJ retreat. That's a 2-day weekend retreat with Kwan Haeng Sunim. And then we also have several indoor and outdoor Sangha workdays scheduled. The first two are going to be on May 10th and 30th. This is an opportunity to just hang out with people, like Dave was saying. You can RSVP on our website if you are available. We also have our art club coming up again on April 27th. Then we have artist practice retreat on May 17th, and we're going to have more art club dates in the summer as well. Believe it or not, summer culture registration is open. You can go on the website right after this and register to sit Kilche. It's a 3-day minimum, 1 week increments. Well, I guess it's just a 3-day minimum, so you can sit 3 days or more. You do need experience with a Quantum School of Zen retreat to sit Kilche. So if you want to do that, definitely sit a retreat before.
And the entry is going to be, do we make the entry for the summer retreat?
I think it's 2 entry days, Wednesdays and Saturdays. So.
Wednesdays and Saturdays.
Yep, and then you can sit, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or more. You can sit the whole month. What else? Oh, save the date for Founders Day and our 2nd annual PZC Zen Fest on August 2nd. That's going to be a lot of fun and music and all kinds of things. Other than that, we always have our usual weekly events. On Wednesday nights, we have dinner and we have chanting, which you don't get to do on Sundays, so definitely come for that. And Westside Zen is on Thursday nights, and that's actually in Providence and on Zoom. If you've been coming for a while, consider becoming a member or making a donation. We do depend on donations for a large portion of our operating costs, so it's very much appreciated. And join us for refreshments and salsa and interesting talk with Dave right in the lounge. And check out the gift shop as well. Thank you very much.
No, I don't. No.